thank you all for joining us for today's Think Tank with our very special guest, Michael Luwoye. So, before we get started, we would like to acknowledge that the Sarah Lawrence Theater Program works, learns, and lives on the unceded land of the Lenape, Munsee, and Wappinger people, and we pay respects to their ancestors past, present, and future. We are so excited to welcome Michael to Sarah Lawrence Theater today. You might have seen him in the smash musical Hamilton. Woo! Sounds like y'all really haven't heard of it. So, Michael has also been seen in powerful New York performances of The Invisible Thread, Witness Uganda, and starred in regional productions across the country, like Tick Tick Boom and Cardboard Piano. You may have also seen him in notable television and film roles for Bluff City Law. I was having a little trouble with that word earlier. The Magicians, Curb Your Enthusiasm, The Prodigal Son, The Gifted, and Spike Lee's She's Gotta Have It. He is currently working on a new film, Emancipation, set to come out later in 2022. We are so grateful to have him join us at Sarah Lawrence Theater today. Please help me in welcoming Michael Luwoye.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi.
Hi, Michael.
Hi, Stephen.
We're so glad that you're here.
Very happy to be here.
So you heard that bio created by Google that Phoebe just said. What's your version? Who is Michael Luwoye?
Oh, we don't have enough time. No, I am, gosh, that's such a, if you can't tell, I'm like kind of awkward about talking about myself sometimes. I'm native of Huntsville, Alabama. I'm Nigerian, born in Huntsville, Alabama. I graduated from the University of Alabama in 2013 with a BA in musical theater. I did that. I had no real intention of going into a career for theater by any means. Theater was something that I just started to do in middle school as somewhat as a hobby, but I was new to the middle school that I went to, so I didn't really know anybody, so it was a way for me to make friends. And I just continued to do that throughout high school, and then Alabama was kind of felt like a feeder school for my high school, so got accepted into that and continued to do it. And eventually I had a very, very pivotal experience in a theater space that led me to feel like I could do this in some capacity. That being said, I had no idea that Broadway existed, or that there was a New York or LA or any of that, so I didn't know what that meant for me. But long story short, moved to New York and started to work there, and it's been one of the best flukes of my life.
Awesome, thank you. What do you love right now? What brings you joy?
What brings me joy?
Yes.
That's a great question. As mentioned before, I just finished filming this movie called Emancipation, which is a movie that deals with I don't know if any of you have seen this very infamous photo of a man. His name is Gordon, but it's titled Whipping Peter. It's an enslaved man who has all of these like whips on his back, these scars on his back. It's a pretty infamous photo. It's a story about his life, and when I started doing that film, it was something that I was like, this is going to be a very, very difficult thing. Not only contending with that, but also not only contending with the context of the film, but also just trying to understand how to celebrate it. I privately celebrate things, but when it comes to things being like actually feeling it, I often find myself celebrating through other people's means, how other people celebrate. So I would ask myself the question of like, how do I celebrate this big event, first movie? How do I celebrate and feel joy inside of this thing? So I went on a little bit of a journey of that. I did the other people things. I bought a lot of food and sweets because that seems to be a thing that people do. I tried to party in a way. I don't party, but at the same time, it's like there's a pandemic happening. You know, it's Ramadan, it's a pandemic happening. So I couldn't really meet with people and celebrate in that way. So and it kind of ties in with a long-standing question that I've been having with myself for the past few years of what is my autonomy. And what I found was that the way that I experience joy, the way that I celebrate, is very much tied to my definition of success, which is literally the next thing, like succession, as opposed to it being some like big moment, that an accolade that everybody else can actually see. It's just the fact that I'm here doing this. And the pandemic very much brought that to a specific type of context. And so I celebrate joyfully in the little things. The big things too, but very much the little things. I have a personal practice of counting my days, which, what are we on today? Not that way. Literally counting my days from the
You
day
count
that
on
I
your
was
social
born.
media, I've
Yeah.
seen it.
From the day that I was born to today. And goodness, we're on the 8th today. I'm not going to embarrass myself by getting the number wrong, but it's over 11,000 and all of that. That's one of the ways that I celebrate joy. I recently have been able to start to exercise again. Post-Hamilton, I started to experience a lot of injuries. And so since 2019, I haven't really been able to exercise, and have been able to start to do that, and that's been a big thing that I've been celebrating and finding joy in. I journal like the Dickens, so I like to write and kind of reflect that way. That's another way that I experience it. This might seem weird, but not to me. I like to work out ideas by just like putting on a microphone and just talking into it for anywhere from a couple seconds to hours, and just like work through something that I watched or an idea that I had or something that somebody said that was really pivotal and impactful to me. But it just helps me to do that. So I find joy in a lot of different avenues.
That's how we make work here at Sarah Lawrence. It's a lot of just kind of exploring and devising new work. So if you ever want to make something, we'll be glad to welcome you into our creative space. Awesome. Yeah, I'm so glad that you mentioned. I was going to ask you about your counting your days gratitude project. I think that's so awesome. Everybody noting that, like all of these forms of self-care, self-care is not retroactive. It has to be part of your artistic practice, and like Michael is living proof of that, which is awesome. Some of our co-hosts today are from my class, Music and Theater Practice Creating Community, and we've been studying Hamilton, and we have been like stalking you and reading all of these articles about you, and so they all have some questions. And literally, I was like, okay, 10 minutes. Google Michael Luwoye, come back to me. So that's how we did class today. But they're gonna ask you a few questions, and then we're gonna open up to everybody else. Does that sound like a plan?
Sounds good.
Cool. What?
Sure. Hi.
Hi.
My biggest question was, when you're playing a role like Alexander Hamilton, which so many people have played before, and who the creator even played, like how do you bring your own originality to it and like make the character your own? Because every Hamilton I've seen, they're all different. Like every cast brings a new like take to it. So I'm really curious, like what were your thoughts going into that process?
So I joined the show right I literally joined the show 2 days after the Tonys. When they won all the things. And walking into that building was interesting in that sense because it was still very charged. It was still like the original company was still there and all of that. I'm personally not a person who likes to jump on hype with things. I didn't listen to the soundtrack, or the soundtrack. I didn't listen to the original cast recording until like very late into the game. So I like to have my own personal feelings about things when it comes to it. And so I knew that there was something that was, how do I put it? I knew that there was an assumption against someone stepping into that position. And by that I mean that there's a weird, and I wish that it would die, like stereotype about alternates, standbys, and understudies and that sort of thing coming into any sort of position. And it's also this thing of the writer is playing the role. Lynn is playing this. So a practice that I have doesn't always work, but something that I was intensely aware of and was intensely doing with this show was accepting like the bare facts. And I remember there was a pivotal moment of this when I was watching the show for the first time. It was a Wednesday. And I was sitting there and I was looking and Lynn was doing the show and I was like, well shit, like I can't do what he does. And the switch kind of came up with like, but he also can't do what I can do.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so watching the show, I had the luxury of being able to shadow Miguel Cervantes, who was current Hamilton, who also originated the Chicago company. And he was kind of taking the primary role when they were building the role. So when I was doing it, I watched them teaching him. So I was learning the role myself in the back of the theater with the camera and like doing that sort of thing. And kind of internalizing it for my own self and learning what my specific way of doing the role was and my interpretations of the text and all of that, my feelings and what this image means and what this person on this side of the stage and all that sort of stuff. I don't know if you've seen like those like conspiracy theory like web things where people are like connecting the dots and stuff like that. That is my brain. So, I just had so much time to play and have fun with that and kind of stick to that thing of there's so many people who will be doing this. And at the time I was the fifth Hamilton, technically. So there's Lynn, there's Javier, Munoz, Miguel, and John Rua, who was like the understudy at the time, and then there was me. So I was the fifth one doing it, officially the third person to do it on Broadway. And it's just sticking to that point of like, they all have their way of doing it and taking all the notes and learning from that, but like listening to that original voice of mine, just saying like, I know that there's people that will see me coming into it, especially the first year that I was on Broadway, because I would hear my friends told me like there was someone who was like, they came to the show and was like, I don't know if I want to like watch the show now because Javier's not going to be on and there's this other person that's there. He's like, you want to see the show. Like you want to see me do this. And I kind of reveled in that because when you step on stage and you see this face versus Lynn and Javi, it does, at least for me, it does the thing that I love about the relationship between an audience and the people who are on the stage, which is a hard thing with the show. is that it forces you into a place of listening and the unknown. You have no idea what's going on. Life is like an improvisation, basically. And so one of the hard things with Hamilton is that the soundtrack is like out, so everybody already knows it. And so they're coming there and they're listening to this, they're mouthing the words and all this sort of thing. So there's this kind of way that the show, while it's so popular, kind of feels like a jukebox musical. And that kind of robs you, at least from my perspective, of being able to like experience it live for the first time and get new feelings and all this sort of stuff. So for me to be a very like stark thing to like be like, look, who is this? And someone's coming on stage and the words kind of bring it to you and the world's gonna know your name, what's your name? There's a million things I haven't done, all these sort of things. It kind of already sets you up for that because people are already there for that sort of thing. So yeah, they have so many things that they can do. All of the other Hamiltons win all the things that he could do, but none of them can do what I can do. So
Yes.
that kind of
So my question is, for someone who's trying to make their mark in the world of musical theater as an actor or as a creative artist, what advice would you have for someone trying to do that, and also how have you done that yourself?
as Glenn and Ty already know, I have a thing with words and names and things like that. Another thing that is like a joyful practice of mine is reinterpreting and reframing things. And I've always had like a sticking point with that phrase of like making your mark. And a part of the reason is because it always feels like it's coming from this place of like you're supplicating and asking someone to like approve. And I personally have always kind of felt like this is like the making of the mark. This is maker's mark, no. But this is like you're making your mark now. Like you're the person creating it now. This is it. And I don't mean for that to sound dismissive in any sort of way, but it's, I think that I have a difficulty with the like dynamic where it's like you're always earning something. Because one of the more like difficult things about the world is that the world doesn't always recognize who you are, what you are, how you see yourself, because it likes to put you in certain boxes, or it likes to not accept the way that you've declared who you are. And so I've had this sort of frustration with that for a long time. And when it comes to making my mark, it's like I am a pretty sensitive and pretty like cerebral and creative individual, to list 3 things off the innumerable list. But my interests go in so many different ways that I know that I never really felt like I fit into theater and acting in this world, but I have a very strong sense that I belong. I have a sense of being inside of this thing, and so I spend a lot of time trusting that thing. And when I go into different spaces, that when they build their context, they don't necessarily have a place for me in that sense. I don't necessarily feel like I have to worry about it so much because I have my own thing. So working on a film set for the first time, which was, what word would I use? I'll take that back. Working on a television set for the first time was extremely jarring because I had no context to it. So I felt very dependent to the whims and the things that other people would do. What's the way that they work? How do they do things and everything like that? I didn't have my own specific language. I didn't know how to translate my vocabulary from theater, which I've done for so many years, into that space. So I felt very out of place, and I felt very less than because I'm like trying to get their thing. I can't make my mark for them. I don't know how, like what to earn. I don't know how to like perform in a certain way and all that sort of stuff. I felt very uncomfortable for a lot of time. Started having panic attacks. Felt very uncomfortable. And in like learning and processing like how I interpret things and like looking for materials and certain ways of like defining it for myself, I found my own language for it, so that by the time I got to a film set and there's all of this other stuff that's going on and chaos and miscommunications and things like that, I have my own practices that's like, you do your thing and I'll have my thing, and when we communicate, I'm actually speaking from my voice to ask for certain things. So I like to go against that notion of like trying to make my mark, because my being is my mark being made. I'm creating it as I speak and breathe. So, yeah.
Okay, trying to think of how I want to word this. Yeah, I guess I'm wondering.
Just like
Hello. So I guess like, I was wondering if you have like any experience or like could speak to any like, I don't know, kind of handling the, I mean, because let's face it, as many steps forward as the industry is trying to make, like there's still going to be issues of like, sorry, of I don't know, like just how do you navigate like, I don't know, just instances where, I don't know, you're asked to do something that's much more like stereotypical or superficial as opposed to I'm so sorry. I can't get these.
You don't need to apologize.
It's
It's
okay.
fine. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I don't know. I feel like it's unfair too, because, like, I don't know. Unfortunately, I feel like when you're not part of the majority in some way, you kind of become the unofficial or or the volunteered, like, representation of your diaspora. So, I mean, like, that's its own thing. I guess, like, what I'm trying to ask is, I guess just navigating, like, when you're asked to, like, play something that is a stereotype or play something that, like how do you break those boundaries? How do you, how do you navigate those situations?
Initially, I just rejected that show. I said no to a lot of them, because it was something that, for me, I don't think that I can describe myself anything other than, well, that's a lie. But I would, I describe myself as a Nigerian American, a Black American. There's so many different things that I can say in that sense that I can call myself. But I also know that I am not the best representative for all of the different facets of people who could fall inside of that category. So I do not represent the experiences of all Black people. I do not represent all of the experiences of all Nigerian people, and everything that's in between. I don't do a great job of that. When it comes to being a stereotype of them, even if I put my best effort inside of it, it might come off a little caricature-y. And so it can feel really off. I'm a type of person who, again, likes to feel things. And so if I can feel it, I believe that that feeling comes through. And so with this movie specifically, I guess most recently, I've been approached and offered, not offered, but offered the opportunity to audition for many movies or many projects that had to do with enslavement. And I have turned them down. And what was interesting to me about this specific one was, aside from, just being frank, like just the opportunity, the timing of it happening with the pandemic, and also the professional aspect of it, was asking myself, why am I turning it down as much? And because it's a thing where I always find it difficult that we live in a time where there's the difficult conversation is supposed to happen, but it's always not the right time to have it.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's always the thing of like, we can talk about that, but not now. It's gonna happen at some point. And I think art does a thing where it helps to contextualize challenging experiences, whatever it is. So something that a community that I might not understand, I could read something about it. I could listen to someone who's from that community, even though I will never be able to say that I am somebody from that community. I can learn from them. Always. Something. A modicum or a mega amount. Whatever it is. And so I would ask myself, why am I not wanting to do this? And so I took this particular project because I was like, I want to explore what my prejudices are about it. And what are the things that are blocking me from it? Again, I know that I can't present something that's going to speak for and be representative for every person inside of the thing. That's also not my responsibility. I'm only one person. I can't be the whole team. I can't be the whole thing. So I can only speak from my facet of it. And yeah, just do that little part and explore what it means to me, and actually have my own personal inner content to be able to have a conversation with other people. If it is just left at that place of, we're just going to talk about it. If it's just that much, then it's like, here's how I feel about this. And to honor that feeling as much as it can be, because the industry's slow. America's slow. Everything is slow. Because reality is fast. And reality is ephemeral. Reality is something that you can't catch. It's how do you solve a problem like Maria? How do you hold a moonbeam in your hand? You can't do it. It's unless, you can do this and everything like that, but you can't keep it there. You know, everything is undulating, everything is moving, so there's no chance that you can capture all of that sort of thing. And I feel like we avoid it because the sensation is painful, and we are also very immature when it comes to compassion and even the base thing of exercising empathy. And so it's hard to be in those feelings and not know how to embody them without having to try to dispel it, try to give it out and put it to somebody else and blame or something like that. So, yeah, I hope that semblance of that made sense. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Jenny?
Hi.
Oh,
Hi. I know you mentioned at the beginning of this, working through injuries and stuff. I just recently I still have a vocal injury, and it was hard for me to just kind of remind myself that through these roadblocks and stuff in the way that are still in the way, that I kind of just belong in this artistic presence with all these amazing people. And how do you just remind yourself that you're you belong here, you're worth being here, even with all these roadblocks. I'm sorry if this is jumbled or whatever.
have you heard me talking? No, that's not jumbled at all. I went through a similar vocal experience in college, and similar to back then as I did with this time now, I felt a lot of anger and was pissed and was also in a lot of denial, thinking that I could do some of the same things that I was able to do at full health, And I went through a period of time where that would happen. And I would be re-injuring myself and making things like, making situations where it's just like, it feels even like feel worse. But I'm also like, I'm dealing with the dissonance of like my old self-image and abilities and this new thing that I don't know how to either describe or like how to accept it. And so there's a period of time where this is happening a lot, you know? And once I get a little tired from that, what I found with the injuries that I've had, so I popped a rib out of place.
Ooh.
I had tendonitis in my shoulders. I had like a knee injury thing, and also had diastasis recti. Has anybody heard of that before? So fun. Diastasis recti is a thing that usually happens with pregnant women and children, babies, where the muscles behind your abdominal, like your six-pack, your your abs, your six-pack, the muscles behind that kind of peek through the tendons a little bit. It can be something that's like really, really gruesome, and something that's just a little bit. I had a little bit. So it wasn't too bad. I also had a couple of hernias, call them key and peel. That's fine. I like took some time from that and everything. I have all of these things, and it's like I had to contend with my attachment to my self-image, my old self-image, and how that also was a representative for what strength and health was, and vitality, those sort of things, and how much, not only did I not accept this new thing, but also how much guilt and shame was attached to the new thing first, which was something that I had to spend a lot of time with, like thinking about what does it say that I only had such a fragmented view of what health and vitality and strength and all those different things were. And so I spent a lot of time just being weak and not doing anything, and being very sedentary and like feeling the very difficult, shitty feelings that come from that. And after a while, some questions started to come from me of like, is there a possibility that this can be informative? Because there's a lot of things that I've learned physically that I would never have learned if I had just been at that full health consistently through this time. And it's like, okay, now I know things that I can be proactive about and preventative with to avoid this type of an injury. But then this is also like creating for me like a web to be able to know like there are other things that are not injured that I didn't experience, that I can learn about those things to be preventative and care for those parts of my body as well. So it kind of, as much as it seemed like something that I'm not able to accept initially, it actually like brought in my scope to be able to see like all of this has like more care that can be taken into.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
Yeah. I like it. I like that you named your hernias Key and Peele. Did you know Jordan Peele is a SLC alum? And by alum, I mean he dropped out. And but I do have a question. So Hamilton is, going back to that, it's often kind of lifted up as like a musical about immigrants and like an immigrant story in a way. And I'm interested in how you either like connect to that or don't, like with your own story of like your parents being Nigerian immigrants and like, your own experience.
I didn't.
Yeah.
To be very honest.
And that's...
I didn't see it that way. Again, conspiracy theories now in my brain. I had a challenge with that sort of thing, specifically, because the show itself, for me, was something that it felt like, I don't mean for it to sound this grand, but I also did feel this. It felt like a very like precious opportunity in a way. Because there's a lot of interviews that I watched before being in the show and like speaking with different people of like, Hamilton the musical, this can't work. A musical about history with hip hop? What the fuck? It's like, this is something that can't work at all. But it's this thing that's like, it irked me a lot, that aspect of it. Because I think that there's something that, I don't know, I chalk it up to culture in a way, but there's something that bothers me with how how cultures, but I can very much speak with ours just because I've lived here all my life. But it's this thing of like how we lack the ability to see relationships between things. And so I do theater, and I have only done one, but I love the language of Shakespeare. And I grew up listening to hip hop, and it's like I can't not see the relationship between those two things. And it's very much how I performed that role. And I also see the beauty in the like way of telling a story through a musical and all these different things. The show for me, I couldn't see like there's the immigrants who get the job done line inside the show, but I had a challenge with that, with the place that we were in. I joined the show in 2016.
Right.
Something happened there.
I wonder what.
Yeah, something happened there. And so, and I don't mean for that to be something that's disrespectful to anyone's political views, but what I mean by that is that.
You're good.
You have to say that, but like genuinely, I don't like whatever your political views. I don't mean to say it in that sort of way, but it's just this thing where like the public conversation, the language that we use when you hear the word immigrants comes up with some side of assumption. Whatever side of the aisle that you're on, there's something of like pro or con with that sort of thing. And so I have a thing where it's like I'm always trying to find different language to describe popular things. And I know, or at least I felt, being on that stage, that there's something that's really difficult about trying to tell a story about immigrants and tell a story about like this time period and everything like that with the language that we've been using and with the memes that we've been talking about and everything like that, because it always felt like that's something that will be very like surface level, just meet you like right here for a second and then you forget that. So my agenda was always to try to make it something that it's like every performance is something that like forces you to feel something. And because it's like, I mean, I don't know how everybody else feels about history, or at least the way that it's taught in schools, but I fucking hated it. I did not care about it growing up in school. I did not care about it at all. It's just always something that was off, but even that, it was just uninteresting, and it always felt weird that it's just this one specific type of story. And so I didn't want that to be the way that I'd approached the role with the show, because I didn't want it to seem like the audience is just chairs without desks, and that it's just a history lesson that we're just trying to tell in the same sort of way. So, I mean, I always looked at it from a perspective of like Hamilton as an individual going through survivor's guilt, and all these different things that kind of lead off of that, and what it is to be somebody who's like reaching this type of success and putting himself forward and everything like that, but he never feels like he deserves it, and trying to go through all of these things and being in a position where he is this role of this like creator and doing all these things, but then he's adding all these different roles. He's becoming father, and what is that? What's his relationship to that? Being a father, his father figure in Washington, and all these different things. You see those different dynamics and play with that. What is it with his mother and how that continues to come up in all these different songs? And what is it to be a child and to see the thing that like he needs and feel these things that he needed from a father and not have that, and then to also inadvertently kind of do the same thing to his son, and then to lose his child, and then to be a father that actually cares about losing a child as opposed to his father who left and is not thinking about him again. All these different things, and having conversations with audience members and things like that, felt like you can feel this, and hey, also these other humans who happen to be immigrants also have a human experience in their feeling too. And so it ties to that sort of thing as opposed to just going directly and saying like, immigrants, do this thing. Because before you get to do this thing, people already check out.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. I have one more quick question.
Yeah.
I hear you're a fan of Zelda.
I knew it!
Yeah.
Oh, we love. We love.
Yes. Yes.
Oh, that was so iconic.
Okay, so we're gonna open up the floor to our wonderful theater department students. Yay! So anyone who would like to raise their hand and ask a question, you may.
You can read out.
You can choose. You're the guest.
Oh. That's a
Yeah.
I wasn't expecting to have to. So you're first.
And y'all can just like pass it around as we go.
Hello.
Hi.
I guess I was wondering could you talk a little bit about your transition from going from school to the industry, how that worked, what advice you would have for that, any stories or experiences that you could pass on, just kind of advice for people that age, sort of.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2013, and I had a very unique experience. I often feel guilty with my experience because of how much of an anomaly it feels like, and also feel like my perspective and experience does not have the same feel as other people that I know. By that I mean that I graduated when we did our showcase, which did you guys do showcase at all? So we did a showcase where we went from Alabama to New York, presented in front of agents and managers and hooply dooply. I literally never said that in my life. Hooply dooply. Great. So we did the whole hooply dooply, and I got a couple bites from that. Like the month before I went, I would fly from New York fly from Alabama to New York to go meet, or to like do auditions from the people who eventually became my manager or my agents. And I decided to move to New York just because it was easier and like cheaper. I didn't have to fly back and forth and everything like that. I only had a month lease, and then literally the day before like a month sublet, but the day before my sublet ended, I got my first job, and then had to move to Alabama because I had no place to stay, and then eventually moved back to start to work with that, and have been like doing that sort of thing. After that show ended, I was in New York for a little bit of time, trying to find what I call muggle jobs. Could not find anything because I had no experience. Even from living in Alabama, I always worked for my dad, so I never really had any type of work. So I didn't really have anything. So being very frank, I lied to get work. I said that I knew some person that I did not know, and I got a catering job. It was very awkward when it came to the job that I got, because when I was doing the interview, the person who was interviewing me was like, yeah, just come in and do this thing, you know, just like Julie does. And I'm like, yeah. Never met her. So, like, I tried to do it in an honest way, and it did not work. Very frustrated about that. But I went through just different weird avenues. That also included almost being homeless for a little bit, because I didn't have, like, a sublet ended, and I didn't have a place to go to, and some of my college mates scooped me up, and I stayed on their couch, and all these different things. So the transition for me was rough, if I'm being very honest, and also an anomaly. Like, career-wise, it's like things happened in a very strange, instant way, and it wasn't like it happened like it was always frequent, like everything was happening, but I did enough things that not only I felt satisfied because my expectations were what I call ground beef, low stakes, but like I just always like. Somebody else appreciates that. It's only me, and I'm weird with it, but anyway. But like, it was something that, like, career-wise, it was like this, but like life-wise, I'm figuring things out from the bones. And while I do have like my college mates at the time, I'm still not really comfortable and vulnerable enough to communicate those feelings and articulate them. So it was a lot of like very difficult, anxious, depressed, and like that sort of like suppressed feeling sort of thing, very, very tight. And yeah, if talking about transition and that sort of thing, I find it difficult sometimes talking about my experience and relating that to other people, just because I know, one, that it was that unique, and two, you all live in a different world than I do. I don't know how to do social media good. So when it comes to like posting and doing all that stuff, I feel uncomfortable often because I know that I'm intensely still figuring out who I am, and always have felt very uncomfortable figuring that out online. I would find myself like posting quotes and things like that are things that I find and glean a lot of like beauty and information from and everything. But when it comes to me posting like a personal story, it's like a paragraph and a page and a half long or something like that. And it's all these different things because I'm trying to articulate like what I'm feeling as clear as I can, that you can't just do inside of something like that. So I don't know the world that you all navigate. And I also didn't get representation in that, did I say that word correctly? I didn't get representation in what might be a traditional way. So I gravely apologize that I can't answer that as clear as I would like to. One thing that's carried me through, again, is that like personal curiosity and maintaining that going through things. It's something that has led me to navigate the representation that I have had. Speaking of Zelda, I found my management through Zelda. I shit you not. I went to a party, like a going away party with someone from Hamilton, and her manager had like Zelda earrings, and I was like, huh? And like from there we like connected and talked and everything like that. Boom, manager.
Oh my God.
What does that mean? You know, the people that are now my agents, like they saw me in a show and they like sent like little breadcrumbs like years ago, and like I went that way. It wasn't like a traditional way for me of like doing this and this and this and this. Sometimes that linear way of doing things isn't always the way that it happens. And in one way that's very smarmy to me, because it's like, it's who you know, and blah, 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 blah. But then I come to the city and I'm like, I don't know a fucking person here. You know? So it can be that sort of thing where it's weird and exclusive, but at the same time, that can be very personal, and it's like you meet somebody who you have at least a modicum of trust with, and you can actually speak to them as if you're speaking to someone that you know, and that person that you know could be you, and it's like you're just speaking there. So again, apologies that I can't really say that because my experience has been very unique, and I truly don't know anyone else who's like had that sort of weird trajectory that I've had. But the sort of wisdom that I can say with that is to maintain your own like personal curiosity and like whatever you do once you leave, to trust the people that you do know, the friends that you have who are there. Continue to maintain that sense of community, because for me, I felt very alone at times, and even in a crowd of people that I knew. But when I did feel comfortable to be able to articulate that, whether that was through, I don't drink, so it would just be through a lot of rambling. So either through rambling or tears or something like that, I'd be able to talk to somebody and say like what it is that I'm feeling, and they would be able to help me, and I would feel a little bit more connected to it.
One more.
Only one more?
Or two? We can do maybe two
Oh,
more.
snacks. Yeah, just periphery. Just on this side of the room too.
Back there too. Oh, you choose.
Yeah. Tell me.
Hi.
Hi.
I just was wondering your feelings about how Broadway's changed the past couple of years, because I know because of the pandemic and like the next wave of Black Lives Matter movement, and like at least from like the outside looking in, there's been a lot of like news about like discourse, and I'm just wondering, and like the loss of money for a lot of people who work in Broadway, like. Do you feel like Broadway's changing at all? Do you feel like there's like a different course ahead? Do you feel like it's gonna end up being the same?
I'm worried about it, and I'm worried about it genuinely because I feel like we're at a time where collectively, as a culture, as a country, we're trying to find language for what everyone's experiences are. And that aspect of what we're all trying to do, I think is very useful and very beautiful in some ways. But I also know that we live in America. And America is, to me, one of the greatest engines of advertisement, of saying that something is one thing but not exactly what it is, and then selling that. And while we're finding all this new language and trying to find like who people are and trying to see like how people identify as themselves or what they feel and these sort of things, those things become commodified, and then it becomes very, very cheap art. When it comes to storytelling that can happen on Broadway and things like that, because money has been like the thing that moves things. You gotta get tourists, gotta get seats filled, gotta get like all that sort of stuff. I feel like that financial aspect of it might overtake storytelling and representation, what might be like set up before actually like telling stories that represent people well enough. And my worry is that that is going to be the thing that we do, and that we're just going to toss up things of just like, make a soup of like this gender identity and this skin color and this thing, and like, boom, there we go. And that should bring people in, but it's not actually doing anything about what people feel, like what that sort of thing. I'm worried about that aspect because I feel like it's going to create a lot of shitty art just to make cheap, quick money, and that's going to cause another like fracture and another type of injury to the people who are here, you know. So I'm worried about that part of it, to be honest. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Over to you.
Oh, that.
Oh no.
Okay.
Hey, my question to you is, growing up in Alabama, you were talking about your experience with theater there, and I guess who were like the pivotal people in your life growing up in Alabama, like that encouraged you to pursue theater particularly, or just in general, like teachers or professors? Can you name any of them, and if anybody really was like an influence to you growing up, or?
My middle school and high school theater teachers, Deborah Fleischman and Vivian Atkins, were the two people that
Legendary.
they were kind of like they were like for theater were always encouraging in a sense of just like building that foundation, but also just a random kid doing theater things. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm there, and they're putting me in these things, and like it's encouraging that aspect of it. It's funny is that instead of wide interest in things like that, I at a time I still do this shit, but like I would teach myself music theory because I like music, and there was I thought that was what I was going to do. I wanted to compose for a period of time. One wild dream was to actually move to Europe and be a session guitarist and or a music producer, or eventually compose for Nintendo. So
Sure.
And there's a student teacher that came to visit our school from like Oakwood University, or Oakwood College, who let me know that was a thing that I could do in college. And I cannot state this enough. I had no like future dreams when it came to like college and higher education and things like that. I'm just here for the ride. It was kind of how it felt at that time, especially. Like I didn't have like people were applying to colleges, and I was like, sure, and applied to places. But it wasn't like I had an allegiance to anything or whatever. And so when this person had said like, you can go to school for music theory and composition, it's like, oh wow, an interest that an original interest is something I can pursue. That's interesting. I kind of want to go for that, and that kind of drive kind of led. So Miss Fleischman, Miss Atkins, and I do not remember her name, unfortunately, but this student teacher, those sort of that kind of connective tissue is kind of what led me to that.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
More questions or back to you?
No more?
I think we could do a couple more and then, yeah.
Yeah.
This is a Hamilton related one,
Uh-huh.
if you don't mind. I was wondering if there's anything that you view as Hamilton, not like real Hamilton, but like Broadway Hamilton,
Uh-huh.
like what you knew that the audience didn't know. And I actually saw you as Hamilton, so this is like just like a fun little.
What
I don't know.
like what I personally knew about, what I personally interpreted about the character that no one else.
Like, what's one little thing that like you knew about your Hamilton that the audience sitting in front of you didn't know watching it? Does that make sense? Like, if you like came up with, I mean, obviously Hamilton's a real person with a real backstory.
Yeah.
But something that was part of like what was influencing your performance, or something that you knew about about your character.
Yeah.
That wasn't like, in the script.
I go back to the point of the Survivor's Guild thing. When I first was like, this is the number that I want to do in the show, it was Hurricane. It's one of my favorite numbers in the show, if not favorite, but that specific arc of We Know to Quiet Uptown is like one of my favorite arcs in the show, sections of the show. And it's that whole thing of like being young, scrappy, and hungry and everything like that, but that's like the scrappiest scrap before he gives up to make his final decisions. Being like the Survivor's Guild aspect of it is like he's leaving his hometown and everything like that, but he survived the hurricane. Why is he the person who's getting on the show? And all of these accomplishments and everything that he's doing, and this woman who is loving him, and this family that's accepting him, and all these things, and like feeling that all of these great accolades and everything like that, but also feeling like throughout the whole thing that I deserve none of this, while also trying to talk about legacy, is something that's really, really, really difficult. And getting to this place where somebody's about to basically show him himself. We know that you're a downright dirty bastard. We know that you did all these things and everything like that. You've been hiding them, your financials and everything like that. And he's like, Burr, like, how do I know that you're not gonna say this thing? And Burr's basically like, you don't. He's out. And then hurricane hits. And this is this moment where he's like going back to his family shit. In the eye of the hurricane, there's quiet. Quiet was something that was very specific to me, because it's like, I mean, eventually it leads quiet uptown, but it's like this whole thing about like, what happens when no one else is around him? What is he actually feeling? And then it starts to swirl to this place where he's like, wait a second, I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, and I did this, to the very end of it. And when my prayers to God were met with indifference, I picked up the pen. I wrote my own deliverance. Me versus God. To then go to the point of, I take the children to church on Sunday, and I pray. So someone who's surviving and getting to that place and having to humble themselves to that point, to then having to humble themselves eventually to the point of making the choice. Do I live or do I die? At the very end, to raise his gun. That sort of thing. Survival. Having how to survive. Yeah. Yes, yes. Come to me afterwards. I don't know if this is the last question, but come to me afterwards. I'm fine to talk. But yeah. Hi.
Hi. I was wondering if, up to this point in your career as a working actor, because I mean, being an actor is work, if you have ever become fatigued by the grind of the business side of things, how do you reignite your interest in your art? Does that look like self-producing, and if so, in what form? Probably should have stopped you before this, I apologize. Does it look like leaning and consuming more commercial theater, film, TV, or maybe going the other direction and just finding some wild avant-garde shit to lean into? To continue your interest and your passion in the art and the business side makes everything a bit bleak.
Yeah. I'm going to say this with the license to be able to, like, massage it later. But I don't necessarily like the industry. And what I mean by that is that I don't relate to, we don't have the same aim. I think that their aspect of it can be something of money generating, and while a bitch loves points, I still like to be able to do this as a self-study. And by that, what I mean is that I'm learning about myself, but I'm learning about the character selves, which also allows me to learn about yourself, and yourself, and yourself, and yourself. It's a thing about empathy and compassion to me, and it helps me to learn how to be a better human. So I love that aspect of it. And when the pandemic started especially, like I said before, the question about autonomy was something that's been very important and on my mind for a long time. And during the pandemic, when you're trying to do auditions and things like that, you're doing self-tapes and you're sending them into a void because you're not able to meet people, you're not having conversations with anyone, and you're just sending them out. I got very fucking frustrated about that because it's like, what's the point? This should be a conversation. This should be something that's happening. And in certain respects and aspects, that's kind of an irrational thing to ask for. But at the same time, I felt that. And so I was like, I definitely do with that question of like, what's my autonomy? I have to, one, examine what my autonomy is, but then two, what am I creating? What am I creating? The panic attacks and things that I was having. Like, how am I like nurturing that aspect of it? So you know what a bitch did? A bitch watched Law & Order SVU. And this is why. Law & Order SVU is one of my favorite shows, but at the same time, it's something that I grew up watching, and that was an easier context for me to help to digest what I'm experiencing. I'm having panic attacks inside of this space, but like, what am I feeling panic about? I don't understand camera movement. I don't understand lighting. I don't understand the properties and all these sort of things. I don't understand how to translate my language for theater into this new space. I feel very foreign inside of this space. So I watched SVU. I've seen every single episode, and I've seen every single episode, and I'm still watching them over and over again because it helps me to do that thing. And by that, like with that, I write as well. For me. No, I don't know if anybody else has seen it. But it's for me. I write. I make commentary. I'll turn on my like computer and things like that. I'll let the episode play. I'll talk through scenes and like work out this aspect of it. I like this camera movement. I like this thing. I take my notes. All that sort of stuff. It helps me in that sort of way because I'm not asking for somebody to. I'm not asking for somebody to like give me that creative thing. I know that I'm the source of it. I know that I have a resource, and I know that I can collaborate and connect with other people who are also sources and resources, but I don't like the sort of gatekeeping thing of that. That's one of the things that I really, really, really fucking hate, is something where it's like, because I mean, I don't have a career if this was a thing that, I don't have a career if this was something that happened where it's like, we're only going to allow people who are well known to do shit. Someone took a chance on me. Stephen Cockle took a chance on me. And was just like, we're gonna cast you in this thing that you newcomer, you don't know, Diane Paulus, all these people, Griffin Matthews, Matt Gould, they took a chance on me. I don't exist career-wise without that thing happening. So for me to have to wait for a movie to do, this movie that I just did, I'm name dropping. I'm aware that I'm name dropping, but I'm doing it specifically to that other point of like, I can't do what they do, but they can't do what I do thing. Like, I'm working with them, but they're also working with me. I'm doing a movie, I just finished a movie with Will Smith. And it's like, huh, that's cute. But at the same time, it's like, it's not a thing where I have to earn that position. I've been here. You've been here. You've been here. This isn't a thing where it's like you have to be in this place and it's like, I gotta get to a place where I've done this and I've done this many PK turns and pirouettes and I can do blah, 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 blah. Like it's, no, you have your own creative voice. You figure out how you can translate that and what context it actually rings and resonates through the best for you. You speak through that, and you create through that thing. And some people are gonna deny it and some people aren't gonna recognize it, but you know it. So yeah, I watch SVU. And I listen to
So audition tape for SVU when?
huh?
I don't know if the series is over.
When are you going to audition for SVU?
I don't think that I can. I think that I might explode if I was in the same room with Marissa Hargitay. But I listen to a lot of different like off the wall things. I play video games. I do things that are just like that seem to be very dissociated, but then if I'm having a conversation for them, all of these different things connected. It's just like, and I'm able to connect everything. But it's a wide. Keep your interest and scope wide, because you never know how it's going to concentrate. So yeah. Very well.
What a perfect place to land. Michael, we just want to thank you so much for being here and being part of the Sarah Lawrence community. This was like way more than I ever expected. I just feel like you dug deep and tugged at the heartstrings like of who we are. So that was so awesome. Thank you for coming. Come back anytime.
Invite me back.
Seriously, we would love to make work with you. We would love to hear more from your experience and your perspective. Come teach a class here. So you are always welcome in Bronxville anytime. Roll back.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna finish up and maybe have a couple of photos with Michael if you're okay with that. And if there are any straggler questions we want to come in, but let's give him one more.